So it's going around.
It is
Yeah.
definitely something that's going around. Thanks for everyone for joining us. We'll get going in just a couple minutes here. It definitely is going around, and I think like Ashley's family, I think she needs to make up new disease names at this like.
Well,
Sorry, I'm picking on you. You're in the background.
yeah. I've had it 3 times in the last, since its inception, talking about COVID for those who can hear us. And each time it impacted me differently. Like one time it was like I shrugged it off. One time I was sweating in bed with the chills for 4 days. I mean, it was interesting. I don't know if it's different strains or what it is, but it wasn't fun.
It definitely has had different impacts. I think like a lot of people that we've heard from have had those similar things. I did hear from my doctor's office that whatever the booster was for this year has not been good about combating the strain that came out, similar to flu shots some years, similar types of situations. So, hey, thanks everyone for joining us. This is like the last week in Mortgage Day for the first time in 2024. So I can get my legs back under me a little bit. I have the best person in the world here with me to do that. So oh yeah, whatever. And known to you by many, Rob Henger. Rob, I looked at your title this morning. You're the president of mortgage banking.
Yeah, really swanky now, huh? So when you're a shareholder and you work for a really small bank, you just get to make up your own titles. So that's pretty cool. So literally,
I had, so I adjusted it. So maybe I gave you a promotion today as we start the new year here. So
well, kidding aside, last year when we started, we literally had 9 employees in the whole bank. 9, like that was it. One branch, all of us. And I think we're up to like a whopping 24. So we're huge now.
yeah.
But we're having fun.
That's a lot. It's been almost exactly, I was looking at that this morning. It's been almost exactly 1 year, right?
It has, although, for that, I was under a non-compete for a while. So I had some restrictions on what I could and I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So I was able to do foundational work, but not really origination work. Of course, that ended in November. So I'm back to mortgage banking, and I'm remembering how difficult it is. I'm still trying to figure out why the heck I chose this career so many years ago, or maybe it chose me, right? Who knows?
I'm a true believer in it chooses you, and you are sucked in, and it's very hard, very hard to get out. But share with people. So we'll get rolling here. Share with people where you're at now. I mean, many people know you, but many people probably know you from your career. So share with people what you're doing and where you're at now.
Sure. So first off, Happy New Year, everybody. I don't want to dwell on 2023 or 2022, right? I mean, let's just let those 2 years go away, and let's look for more positive opportunities and positive life in 2024. I will share. I don't know if you can see this. My lovely daughter she's our marketing person here at the bank, and she got me this for Christmas because my mantra is find the fun, right? I mean, in life, if you let the heaviness of this business impact you, it will impact you, and you got to shrug it off. And if you're not making money, at least go out and have fun, right? I mean, we can put up with mundane, difficult lives when we're making money. If you're not making a lot of money, have a good time. So, but just to answer your question, welcome and Happy New Year, everybody. So Rob Henger, local bank. I am a 30-year mortgage banker, or 30-year plus. And I operate, or I am starting a mortgage platform in one of the smallest banks in the Southeast, local bank, literally a nice simple name. And we, in a 8-month period of time, so let me start by saying this is a 108-year-old bank that never made a mortgage. And I mean, we did some 20-year lands and farms and things like that, but never made a 30-year fixed mortgage until June. So June of last year, we made our first mortgage. I was a good friend of mine's son. I suckered him into being our first borrower. And, but literally when we started last spring, this bank had never done a loan. We didn't have our HUD ID. We couldn't spell Fannie Mae here. So we've stood it up, and we're now I don't know, we're doing about, I think we'll do 7 million this month. So, in my previous life, running the mortgage operation for First Bank, we did 7 million in a day, right? We did, we did probably 6 or 7 billion a year. So, just doing 7 million small, but it's a lot of fun. I'm very blessed. My daughter, 23-year-old young lady, is working with me, and a good friend of mine's, his son is working with me. So I've got some millennials, or maybe even, young folks that are learning the business, and it's a blessing to be old, and trying to impart wisdom and trying to teach people the mortgage business. And it's kind of nice to do it at a time that's not crazy. I mean, this is a difficult time. I don't want to, I don't want to take that away, but it's also kind of nice to do it at a time that's not crazy. So that's local bank, and that's where I am. And literally when I say, I mean, like, I'm underwriting loans, I'm selling loans, I'm issuing I know what an ICD is now. So all these things.
Rob is getting a refresher course,
Amen.
and everything, and maybe a little bit of new stuff all at the same time. And Find the Fun is the reason why I truly, you're the best person to do this first session of the new year with me, because your energy is contagious. I love seeing people that are around my same tenure and age, just like enjoying as much as they can, as many places as they possibly can. So I appreciate you for that. I thought we'd start just talking about some of the numbers and kind of like where things are starting here at the first of the year. So job growth, 216,000 in December. Flat-ish rates. I mean, tell me if that's accurate still or not, because I'm not on the front line, but kind of flat. They've kind of settled in maybe a little bit in the last month or so.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, one of the disadvantages of being way down in the swamps of mortgage banking is I'm probably not paying attention as much as I used to, right? But my perception, for right or wrong, is we are, with the term soft landing, like we've seen this. I think we're entering into a place of normalization, right? Employment's starting to come in line. We're not talking about heavy recession. We're not talking, we're not seeing excessive spending. Are we getting to a normal? I hope so. Maybe a little bit of normal on a downswing, but I would call it normal. Now, where does that put us from a mortgage rate standpoint, right? So if anybody wants on the chat, I would be curious to give your, you throw your projection, right? Let's go out 9 months, right? So let's look at this, call it September, and what do you think rates are going to be? And a better question is what the hell are they today, right? I mean, we've got, I'm looking at some loans that are that we're still in the high sevens for investment property, and still, pricing at 99, right? And then I'm looking at some FHA. I think we hit 5.9, 5.75, 5.99 with a little over a point. So it's pretty cool to see the industry. When I started years and years ago, everybody paid an origination plus potentially discounts. For the last decade or so, hardly anybody paid points. So it's pretty cool to see the industry, survive and find ways to create profitability through questionable yields on MSR valuations.
Yep, flex. The industry definitely has flexed and moved around some. Along with, where those things are at, $12.14 trillion in U.S. mortgages as of the first of the year. 386 billion in home equity lines, and 1.08 trillion in credit card balances, which, you know, has inched up there significantly
Yeah.
since COVID, and probably more so since COVID relief.
Yeah.
Ceased. So
So
credit
did I
balance.
read in Faith? Maybe I did. Yeah, I think I confessed in Faith. I didn't prepare for this too well. But why do I think that I saw a statistic that the origination of home equity lines is growing in the IMB space, but shrinking in the banking space?
Yeah, that
I
was,
think you were surprised I picked that up, right?
yep, that's right where we were going to pick up at, actually. So that is a great place. Yeah. So HELOC outlook is considered right now strong, and I definitely wanted your opinion on this. Strong at non-banks and weaker at banks, which seems like the opposite of how I would have initially come out of the chute and thought of it.
Yeah. So
Um,
so here's my take on that, just from the hip, and not sure this is right, but this is my take on it. When you're in a normalized world where, and I don't know what normal is for originations of HELOC, right? But let's just say the market's not going up or going down. Normal. You're generally seeing people take home equity lines from your bank institutions versus your IMBs, and you're generally using those for major improvements to the house, weddings, schools, education, large ticket purchase items, right? Mobile homes, things like that. I think in the post-pandemic, you had the checks, the subsidies. Now people are spending. Everything has gotten a lot more expensive, right? Cost of goods has gone up. People are borrowing more, and we've seen interest rates go from 3 to 8, whatever it was. So if you think about the world that we're in, if folks are living credit card, to get through that gap. I know my wife is living on credit cards to get through the gap. I find that out every month. But if you increase your debt, that is one of the most expensive debts you can have, right? I mean, and unfortunately, it's a debt of convenience. So if you have consumers out there at a 14 to 22% cost, then potentially reaching out to a loan officer at an IMB who is going to give you a HELOC at 10.99, if you're sitting there at 16 to 18, yeah, there is a value there. And that originator at an IMB has got to either securitize, they've either got to turn that to a financial institution or securitize it. Now, so that makes sense. Why are banks not doing that? Here's my 2 cents for what it's worth. The banking sector isn't necessarily known as a HELOC for debt consolidation. We're known for that more big ticket item. You also have, about a year ago, you had this whole, cryptocurrency.com, Silicon Valley Bank, Republic Bank. So when all of that went under, the banking world got real worried about liquidity. Okay, us, even our tiny little bank, and so banks are at a place where our regulatory liquidity requirements, we're not super excited about lending. We don't have a ton of liquidity to put out, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions, depending on how big your bank is, for high interest HELOCs. So the banks, I think, are more interested in the prime plus one, prime plus one, prime plus two. But guess what? If you got this credit card debt, sometimes if you're embarrassed to call your bank, and your credit scores may be 620, and you don't want to call your banker, so you're calling your mortgage guy. So I think it's pretty cool to see what's going on in a world. And again, kudos to all the mortgage people that find a way to survive. None of us are going to get rich originating home equity lines, but if we can keep the lights on and keep it going, awesome.
Well, and if you can help somebody that then remembers you down the road, pretty awesome too.
Yep.
Because if that's the reason why people are doing home equity right now, they're probably not in, like you said, an extremely comfortable position with themselves.
Yep.
And they're looking for assistance somewhere. One of the main reasons that was cited in this article was the fact that the credit criteria at banks, and specifically has extremely tightened.
Yep.
And for the very reasons that you just stated. One of the places in another article that I had read this week, this kind of leads right into that, is that people are looking for home equity for a different reason. And the name of the title of this article was "When Starter Homes Become the Forever Home." Which, it was just
Because
like,
you can't afford the next house because the thing's got too expensive.
well, and that's kind of what this whole article talked about, which it was really interesting for me to see because it talked with several younger couples who had purchased starter homes at a point in their life where maybe they had just gotten married or maybe they weren't even married yet, and planned on living there back in 2018. Planned on living there, how we used to maybe traditionally think
Yeah.
of like owning a home and a mortgage, live there for 2 or 3 years. It's a starter home. It's smaller, but it serves our needs right now. And it provides us a financial advantage versus renting,
Yeah.
right? And in order to build that equity to buy like the next home. And so it talked with several couples that, they bought their starter homes around the 218 range. Well, then we all know what happened after that. COVID somewhere in there after they'd owned their house for a year. They become remote workers. And so now they're in a starter house that's smaller and not by choice, but by how it all worked out. They're both working from home.
Yep.
So any extra space that they have, they maybe have one extra bedroom where they have an office in that bedroom. And then one other person is at the kitchen table or wherever, trying not to get into the other person's space as we're all on these Zoom calls. I mean, we all know kind of how that worked out. But what has happened in the interim is many of those people now want to move. Yeah, Eric Webb, that valid point. They add a kid or two to the equation, or what this, because they're now all at home all together all the time. That's probably a valid thing. What this article pointed out is many of those couples are delaying having children, or delaying having a second child, because what has happened now is the fact that to move into that bigger home, not only because of home affordability,
Yeah.
but because of rates, they now don't even qualify
Yeah.
for that other house, even if they could sell the one they were in. Eric Webb, you are so funny that your wife would make you work outside. It's a good to live where I live because it's a whopping, I think, 19 degrees outside right now. Here today, but I think a lot of spouses felt that way during COVID for sure. So in this article, they pointed out that there was a 35% increase in housing prices since these couples had looked at houses prior. So if you think they purchased in 18, probably looking in 17, what has happened from 2017 until now?
Yeah.
35% is what they were kind of looking at. And
Well, and
so,
if you put that into numbers, right? So let's say your average home back then was 2 to 300 grand. I mean, you're up 100 grand, and that's a hard pill to swallow, right? Whether you like it or not, our world lives in round numbers, right?
yeah,
And I,
yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Well, yeah. And so the cost of that is, I mean, the other side of that too is, both of these couples actually had went out and looked because they wanted to move. One of them wanted to have another child. One of them had 2 children. So they're in this tiny house, 2 kids, both working from 2 little kids, both working from home. Craziness that only you can imagine. But they went out and looked then at houses, and kind of like what compounded their end result from doing that was the fact that they were then looking at houses that weren't the house that they thought they were moving up into. So we're talking shag carpet, kitchens that needed to be remodeled, um, and
Yeah.
and some of those types of things. So ultimately, these individuals then decided to go through a renovation process. and add space into their home. One of them did. One of them ended the article by essentially saying they felt like they were stuck. They were holding off on a family, thinking of a lifestyle that they wanted to live, but were in a place where they didn't feel like they could gain that currently. So they were feeling very stuck. The upside was that if you loved your neighborhood, then you renovate, you stay in your neighborhood
Sure.
that you love. Many other people in that neighborhood were doing a similar thing. The downside,
You
some of those long-term modifications that you may work may create a house that has, from my appraiser days, functional obsolescence,
know,
where
obsolescence.
you're adding rooms where rooms really don't maybe make sense. They may be doing the short term, but
Yeah.
um, not in the long term. So just kind of interested in whether you're hearing about that, seeing any of that in the people that you're talking with that are looking for properties and stuff.
So we're down here in Alabama, right? So we don't necessarily see the high highs or the low lows, but I will tell you what, at the bank level, and we're so small, I'm aware of what our, of the 15 builders that we bank, what they're doing. And we have seen a meaningful pullback from your non-publicly traded or non-production builders, right? So your production builders, they got to do what they got to do, right? They're publicly traded. If you don't grow, you die, all right? But the guy that builds 5 houses a year, or the guy that's got a crew that builds 12 houses a year, when those interest rates, I mean, when the banks started pulling back on liquidity, we went from maybe a prime minus a quarter and a half a point construction to prime plus one and a full point. And in some cases, we're even looking at a little higher than prime plus one. So as a bank, we've increased our cost, which of course, if you're a builder, that's your cost to carry, right? And then at the same token, I'm still hearing, you know, supply chain challenges or product challenges or commodities going up and down. So I give you all this to say it's going to hurt the new home construction market in some smaller towns where the big builders aren't there, right? Like, in Alabama, Huntsville, Birmingham, Mobile, those big builders are still there and they're building, right? They're leveling land and they're doing it. But in the mid markets, call it 100,000 population or under, they're not here. So now the building at a time when we have a housing shortage, your builders aren't specking, and your banks don't want to spec your builders. So it's interesting. Now, good. Hopefully, there's business to be had for the builder community to help in additions and renovations, and those people that do decide to take out the wall, take off the roof, whatever. Maybe there's a good builder now available that maybe 2 years ago couldn't build and now can. So I think you always part of our responsibility in life is find the positive in everything, right? Because if you dwell on the negative, you get stuck there. So hopefully, if you're at a home and you're looking at how expensive it is to go somewhere else and you want to renovate, maybe you can find a great builder and dream the dream that you want to build.
Well, and one of the other things that they talked about, which, isn't an option for where I live, at least part of the year, a big part of the year, but it would be in other places. One of the other things that this article talked about that I was interesting is one of the focuses of them is renovating something that doesn't necessarily require a builder per se, a contractor maybe, but the outside spaces are now all of a sudden becoming that much more important because for people that have had those two kids, they're looking for outlets to wear them out. And so like a pool or, a nice backyard that has a kitchen, set up in the backyard with a space where they can hang out all night and
Yep.
set up something for a movie outside and a play set. And all of those types of things was one of the things that was focused on is like not only thinking about your space as being what's inside the walls, but also what is outside the walls. And I thought that that was kind of interesting that that's where some of their money was going to be invested in the outdoor living spaces. And to
Well,
Eric Webb's point, it's you know, his wife would probably appreciate that and send him into that outside space.
So,
Um,
and if you're if your children are teenagers, you have to subscribe to the philosophy they're going to get in trouble somewhere, either at somebody else's house or your
yeah,
house. Might as well be your house. So,
that was
you know,
my philosophy. I love
it,
the fact that they would be at, I mean, it's like you can bring anybody over here you absolutely want, because then I can tell what's going on. There is a question in the
yep.
chat. Is Rob, are you seeing modular come into the smaller Alabama markets because of maybe not as many builders being there?
You know, so I'm gonna give you my opinion on that. It's a very limited opinion, but my commute is about an hour drive to our tiny little bank. So I see I see a fair amount of rural Alabama. This is what I think. The modular space, I think, is a better product, and it's a good place. However, in the South, you've got a pretty strong mobile home manufacturing mecca here, right? I mean, there, I'm not sure exactly. I think Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, there's a lot of manufacturing going on here, and you've got retail dealers, right? So like literally, you drive down the highway, and instead of seeing a car lot, you see a manufactured housing lot. So you can walk on, and you can pick your home right then and there, and it can be on your lot, ready to go in a week. So I think I see more growth in the true manufactured housing than I do modular, and I think that a little bit has to do with that's a more mature, it's a mature life cycle, it's a mature sales cycle, and it's already there. And that modular, how did they get out and get in front of the consumer? I have no idea if what I just said is true or not, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I could see that as being true. We're kind of like running down. We're down within the last 5 minutes of our conversation today. So there was one thing that I just kind of wanted to tap into your brain a little bit about something I was reading. I always like that when we start making acronyms or new phrases, and out in the industry, and always try to find one that I haven't heard of before. And this one was one that we were.
Hey, I was shout out to Angel Duke. That was Angel replying. We worked together for many years. So Angel, how you doing? Hope you're well.
Yep. And she's seeing both an increase in both
Yeah, I
modular
saw that. Yeah.
and manufactured. And a great resource to have in the industry. We always love it when she joins us. But one of the things that is happening with the younger generation, so I'm thinking, Sophia's age range probably, is called house hacking. And it's the thought process around um, putting yourself in a position. I mean, essentially, when we were younger, it was you live with your friends, right? Where you have a roommate or somebody who is committed to paying part of the expense of your living in order for you to be more financially secure, have greater income. When we were younger, it was you wanted more disposable income to go do the fun things.
Faith, I Googled it. Here's what Google's generative AI says about house hacking. House hacking is a real estate strategy that involves buying a property and living in part of it and renting out the rest. It is a way to generate income for your home, and it can be attractive for first-time home buyers and investors. So I was joking with Faith earlier, and we talked about this, and I said back in my generation, we just called that poor. Like when I was starting in the mortgage business, I'm 23, 24 years old, and my boss told me, she's like, listen, you can't plan on refinance. This is rates when went 9 to 8, right? There's a lot of refinancing going on. She's like, you can't plan to make $50,000 a year when you're 23 because it's not going to last forever. So don't go out and buy $100,000 house. Go buy a $50,000 house so you can afford it. I couldn't even afford a $50,000 house. My first house was $60,000, and I don't remember what the mortgage payment was, but I had a roommate. And
Yep.
by the time I paid the roommate, it was just a couple $100. And then the next house I bought was a duplex, and then the next house was a fourplex, and then then when I got married, my wife told me I couldn't do that anymore, and I had to have a real house and grow up a little bit. But I think Faith, I think it's a great concept, and I think message to everybody here on this call, we got to find new creative ways to get people to to aspire people to start the homeownership journey, right? And it may not be what your parents' journey was. It may not be what your cousin's journey is. It's going to be your journey, and it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And let's just tell people it's okay, right? It's not going to, this is a tough time. It's not going to last forever. But if you sit on the sidelines forever, like everybody on this call probably knows somebody who's in their 60s or 70s, never bought a home, and they're still working, and they're not going to retire.
Yeah.
I don't want to be 60, 70 years old. I'm real close to 60 now that I say that. But I wouldn't want to be at a place where at 65 years old, the national statistics say if at 65, the average person at rent has a net worth of $6,000.
Oh,
You can't retire on $6,000.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what we need to do is inspire people,
And
encourage them, and bring them forward into the industry.
yeah, I turned 61 in December, and I do have several acquaintances, I would say, that I know they're not ever planning on retiring. They're like, if I can retire at 75, I'm going to be lucky, and it makes me very sad. So I think any encouragement. I also think I've got to give kudos to the young people that, are using this term and coming up with this, because when I was in that age range, I was doing things like that so that I had disposable income to go play.
Yeah.
They're actually using it as almost like a financial planning tool in order for them, maybe they own this home now, but it's their financial planning tool for them to buy the next one. When maybe they want to get engaged and, have a spouse and not have that roommate anymore. So you got to give them kudos. They're attempting to do something to take control of their financial future. So I thought that was very good news. So
and I can tell you from experience, those loans are not easy. Like we've done a couple loans for 24, 25-year-olds, and they're getting border income, and mom and dad's helping them with down payments, and they, they're not easy loans. But you know what? There's not enough loans out there to have easy loans. Go get them.
So, yep. Before we go today, I will put something out there that was like brought to my attention yesterday. And I think I knew this, but it's like a good reminder for everybody, is some of those DPA programs that are out there, they are stackable. So, and hard to do loans because you're dealing with multiple sources, but there are some programs out there that are stackable. So for those of you who work with some of those DPA providers, I would do a check-in with them if you've got some of those people that are having a hard time with down payment assistance or qualifying, to see if some of your DPA providers that you work with, whether you can stack them together. And yes, MGIC has some great information and resources on down payment assistance programs that may be able to help you as well.
And I think Freddie is working on a project to comprehensively try to bring all those DPAs to the public and have like a marketplace, if you will.
I'm going to say, I think it's February. So I think we're about a month away from where you can see a lot of those resources, but they are working on something. You are exactly right. So it is always nice to talk with you. I always have this time. We can come into these calls not prepared. I feel like still have a great conversation about what's going on. This was an awesome way to start the new year. We are hoping for everyone that 2024 is an awesome one, and we are here to help you. So please let my team know if there's anything that we can do to help you, and come back next Tuesday at this same time and join us for the Last Week in Mortgage Today. Thank you so much, Rob. You're greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Faith. Thank you. We'll see y'all. Have a great day. Bye.